Happy weekend, everyone. This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Toronto, vanguardne.ca. I'm Norman James. This is the weekend edition of the Leafs Convo podcast, post-game / pre-game, joined as always by my podcast partner in crime, the one and only Michael Augello. Michael, the Leafs a 7-6 winner over the Flyers at Scotiabank Arena. That place was rocking last night. What an entertaining affair, and a frustrating one, too.
Yeah, good morning, Norman. Yeah, entertaining, and as I referred to it as sarcastically as a defensive struggle, because I think both teams struggled to find any semblance of defense or goaltending. I thought, Brian Elliott faced I think he faced over 50 shots. I saw 44 midway
51.
through the third. 51. So, and Freddie Anderson, I thought, on the 5 Flyers goals, the 6th one I don't really count because it was a deflection. But on the 5 goals, I think he was responsible for 4 of them. He was dreadful last night. And I said as the game was going along, for the Leafs to have any chance against Boston, they need Freddie Anderson to be at his best. An average Freddie Anderson, I think, spells doom. Last night, what we saw was not an average Freddie Anderson. It was a bad Freddie Anderson. And, the team said the right thing after the game. They picked him up. They scored all these goals. But in the end, your defense is not good enough. And if your goaltender is not up to the challenge, then I don't have a lot of optimism when it comes to what starts on April 9th.
9 points from the defensive core last night, Mike. It was a fire wagon end-to-end type of game. And I know it's not the type of game that the Maple Leafs are required to play if they're going to succeed in the playoffs. We've warned ourselves and our listeners of this. The Leafs aren't going to be able to transform the game plan into an ironclad, solid, effective approach that can ultimately grab a Stanley Cup this season. This is still a work in progress. This team was 2-30 when trailing after 2 periods, so they were able to at least overcome that adversity. Should we just expect that we're going to get an offensive feast from this team, and if they get lucky, they may succeed on any given night, Mike? I mean, I don't know how much more we can lament the team's shortcomings or failures at this point, considering there doesn't seem to be a remedy in sight, at least in the immediate term.
No, and I mean, yeah, we can stop lamenting it, but it's going to be the thing that ends up biting them in the ass in the end, because you're not going to play a 7-6 game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, the only series I remember in recent memory was that Philadelphia-Pittsburgh wild affair a few years ago where Philadelphia won, and it was Ilya Bryzgalov versus Marc-Andre Fleury, and every game was either a bench or almost a bench-clearing brawl or a wide open offense, and that doesn't happen anymore. You're playing one of the 3 or 4 best teams defensively in the NHL, and most of the games are going to be probably tight checking 3-2, 4-3 at best games. And I mean, the thing I'm concerned about is actually not what happened in the game, but what Mike Babcock talked about after the morning skate, when he was questioned about, inserting Justin Hall into the lineup.
Yeah.
And, he said, well, Justin Hall's got to grab the job, and, Travis Dermott will be back before Gardner, but this rotation of Marinson, Ozaganov, and Hall, one of those spots is going to be available. One of these guys has got to step up and take it. Well, if you read between the lines, if he's saying that one of these spots is open, that means Jake Gardner isn't coming back. And maybe Babcock didn't say, he didn't say that directly, but the assertion was there. And that's a concern because, we know the faults of Jake Gardner. Sure. But the problem is when he's not there and Martin Marinson is your number 3 left-hand shot defenseman, you're in deep, deep trouble.
Did you not see Marinson's Al McGinnis bomb last night? He scored.
Yeah.
That was one of the craziest sequences of puck movement I've seen. And Mike, I messaged you right away. The Flyers couldn't get the puck out. The Leafs couldn't keep the puck in. It was ridiculous. And that exemplifies and just gave you an indication of the kind of night it was. Exhilarating, a lot of fun for the fans. Those comebacks are tremendous. And maybe that's the kind of game we all needed, just to loosen up a little bit and realize that this team's got a lot of offensive firepower. And when given the opportunity to strut its offensive capabilities, this team can excite like no other. I don't really know what else to say other than let's blame the head coach, Mike. I'm kidding.
Well, not to go down the same road regarding their defense or Freddie Anderson, which I already did. The one concern I have, and it's been recent, is the Leafs' failure to win faceoffs in the defensive zone. Last night it was clearly shown on the Jacob Voracek goal where Nolan Patrick beat Austin Matthews cleanly on the draw, so much so that Voracek got the puck back in about a second and fired it past Anderson. You can't allow. I mean, this team is supposed to have pretty good guys in the circle, and I know that the analytics crowd says that faceoffs are not an important aspect of the game. Well, yes,
Okay.
they are when you lose them in your own zone and the team gets control and gets an offensive chance.
What is important to the analytics crowd? I know we get them on our comment section. What is important? You tell us. You guys have figured it all out. So what is important? So what data can you compute right now that'll get this team to win a Stanley Cup? What is that? We're not marketing product. We're not selling shampoo at Costco. We're taking human beings and trying to get them to overcome another group of human beings. Everything is important. Everything.
Whatever Martin Marincin and Jake Gardiner do well, those are the stats that are important.
Oh, God. I think we're past now, Mike, the idea that this team has to just have a bunch of tough asses who are going to protect the skill players. We're past the idea that Jake Gardiner is the second coming of Bobby Orr. We're past the idea that William Nylander is better than Mitch Marner. Who cares? It's time to focus on what this team has to do to improve itself, to put itself in a better position to win a Stanley Cup. You talk about Freddie Anderson not being at his best last night. The guy deserves a chance to not be at his best because he's played with a team, at least compartmentally, that has not been at its best. Freddie Anderson is the straw that stirs the drink. The thing is, if the team's not scoring and that defensive unit ahead of him are doing their best Keystone Cops impression, it doesn't matter how great he is. The Leafs aren't getting anywhere. The only thing we can hope for is that as many of the guys who are hurt and sick and not doing well get back to their A game, get back to health. Freddie Anderson's in the right zone when the playoffs begin. Guys are a little bit more determined. The Bruins maybe show some fatigue. Maybe the Bruins are blowing their wad in the regular season, and when they get to the playoffs, finally, at long last, Zdeno Chara is going to look in the mirror and see a 90-year-old man. That's what we have to hope for going forward, Mike, because to be honest with you, there is no elixir. There is no immediate remedy. There's no one player that can come back into the lineup. There's no quick fix for Mike Babcock. This team is what it is.
Well, Garrett Sparks starts tonight against Ottawa, and one of the things I was pondering when looking at the schedule here, I believe they have 11 games left, and this was one of the two remaining back-to-backs.
He's got to play, and they need to give Freddie Anderson some rest. Don't you agree?
Well, but I agree, but that's not what's going to happen. If they're 2 points behind Boston in terms of home ice advantage, equal amount of games. If that happens, Freddie Anderson's going to play every non-back-to-back game from there until the end of the year. So if they stay close to Boston, they were every player, not just Babcock, every player was talking about home ice, home ice, home ice. It's important to them, at least they think it's important to them, so they're going to go all out. And also not just Freddie, but you saw last night again, Hainsey, Riley, Zaitsev, Muzzin, all close to 25 minutes, whereas Marincin and Hall played 10 to 12. So that's the formula, and that's a formula that may put your team in an exhausted state.
Godspeed to Jake Gardiner. I don't know what's going on with the guy, but he's an exceptional player, and he won't be a Maple Leaf next year. Wherever he goes, I hope he has a long and fruitful career. The same for William Nylander, because he won't be a Maple Leaf next year either. So this is I wanted to see a lot of these guys ride or die and try to figure this thing out. who knows what we're going to get. Any last words, Mike?
The Leafs are facing an Ottawa team that's got a lot of youngsters, that's cleaned out a lot of their veterans, but that doesn't matter. They're going to work themselves up into a lather to play Toronto. Toronto's playing the second back-to-back games. They cannot look past this team. They're going to need good goaltending out of Garrett Sparks, and they're going to need to score. And if they don't, they could lose to the worst team in the league. So that's what we have to look forward to.
If they lose this game, shame on them. Shame on all of them. Shame on fans who make excuses for the loss. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but people have to understand, and I know the team understands this, but again, we get what we get from these guys. But the Leafs have to win this game. These are the games that you bank the 2 points. Not because, well, we just need the 2 points, but we're at that point of the season now where you should be revving your engines and getting to that next gear to enter the Stanley Cup tournament. Folks, sometimes we sound like a broken record, but we have done 300 podcasts in less than a year. Maybe that tells us to do fewer podcasts, but I don't know. This is a project that we eat, sleep, and breathe the game and the Leafs. It's a living, breathing thing. Every single day we decide what we need to do, what we want to do. And Mike, I'm hoping we have 300 more podcasts before the end of the playoff run for the Maple Leafs. That would mean that they'll get past the Boston Bruins, but who knows? Maybe it'll get nuts tonight. Did you notice Will Arnett, Mike Myers, and Steve Higgins in the crowd last night?
I did. Actually, Will Arnett was up in the press box with Gord Miller from TSN, and I saw him walk in and out of the press box.
Do you see his Leaf hat?
Yeah,
he
nice.
said he said that he made that himself. I might start doing that too. That's a tight look at the old school trucker hat. Ray Ferraro noticed Mike Myers and Will Arnett during the broadcast. He said, Mike Myers, Will Arnett. In the middle, Steve Higgins, man. That's Jimmy Fallon's right-hand man, one of the top writers of all time at SNL. I forget who scored, Austin Matthews, and they flashed to the three of them. I didn't know that Steve Higgins was at the game, and I said to my wife, I'm like, is that Steve Higgins? And we scrolled back, and it was Steve Higgins. And then I'm like, oh, there's Mike Myers. So I actually noticed the obscure one of the trio before I noticed the others.
And this will provide an insight here. You saw Will Arnett, Mike Myers, and Steve Higgins. I didn't know who Steve Higgins was. I was concentrating on the rather attractive blonde that was sitting next to Will Arnett.
Whoa, Mike, calm down. No, speaking of attractive, Mike, those St. Pat kits, to me, that might be the most beautiful uniform I've ever seen.
I would like to see, and I don't know if we're going to see it tonight, I would like to see the green with the white lettering. I have to tell you this. I could not read the numbers on the back of the jerseys from the press box. It was not, they're too small, and they're basically patches on the back of the uniforms. I like them. I couldn't read them. And this is not an old man complaint here. I have pretty good vision. I just could not read them.
Even with your Mr. Monopoly souped up monocle, Mike, you couldn't read the numbers? Oh my God. No. How about the green jerseys with the brown pants and the brown helmets? Remember those?
Yes, I do. And the only thing I can remember that is Matt Sundin wearing them. And all that brings back is waive your no trade clause.
Every time I bring up Matt Sundin, every time there's a reference to Matt Sundin, it just the tension on this podcast goes up, Mike, because you and Matt need to sit down and hammer this thing out.
It's never going to happen.
Michael. Anyway, have a good one, buddy. Enjoy the game. We'll talk soon, and who knows what we're going to get, but I'm looking forward to it either way.
Thanks, Norman.